Hello, my name is John Mayer, and I'm the Executive Director of CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. The video you are about to watch is from the annual CALI conference held at the University of Michigan School of Law in Ann Arbor, Michigan on June 4th and 5th, 2026. Most U.S. law schools are members of CALI. CALI publishes over 1,400 interactive tutorials that teach the law to law students. Faculty can also use LessonLink to create formative assessments using CALI lessons. CALI publishes casebooks by paying law faculty to write and review books that can be adopted in many courses in law school. These books are free to download from our website, or print versions can be purchased at near cost. You can download the PDFs or even the Microsoft Word versions of most of our books and add your own commentary before distributing to your students. $300 casebooks are a thing of the past, and adopting one book from CALI saves you more than your entire institutional membership. If you would like to learn more, email me at jmayer@cali.org. I would be happy to visit or zoom into your school to talk about CALI.
All right. Big crowd. See, nobody knows how many people are here. So, hello. I think we'll get started and then and we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, I can tell because I have the this is the Zoom dashboard. So as you can see, we're live and streaming, right, Tobias? Yeah. So we've got 3 attendees. They're online plus you guys. Oh, so you outnumber the online, so that's good. But you can see, oh wait, it just jumped to 6. Hello. So you can see that like most of the people are actually either in, they're in the other sessions. So there you go. But that's all right. I don't mind. It's not like I can get people's names from the online thing and see who didn't come to my session or anything like that. But, hey. Okay, so I'm going to fall over this chair. So because I'm working from my own laptop, I'm going to kind of be like right here. So so last night I changed the title. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, it's going to be all about Drupal 10, right? So powering CALI into an API and AI-driven future. Yeah, wrote that myself. Some of the slides do contain marketing copy written by Gemini. So I'll let you know when that crops up. So we're basically going to take a little bit of a stroll through the Drupal 7 to 10 migration. Then we'll do a quick tour of what's interesting, some of the interesting things about Drupal 10. And then we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the CALI API, which is really interesting and kind of why I really wanted to get to Drupal 10 in the first place. So first we'll cover the Drupal 7 to 10 migration. It took 18 months. And that was, there are probably a number of reasons why it took so long, but it's just it's a complicated system. And we had to move a bunch of stuff from Drupal 7 to 10, obviously. We had about 900,000 user records. We had 1,500 lessons, about 100 books. 400,000 CALI awards had to be migrated from 7 to 10. All in all, I think we got somewhere close to like 1.1 million objects moved from 7 to 10. That took a minute. Some of my initial unoptimized attempts at migration from one database to the other took up to 5 days, which was obviously not something we were going to be able to do. So as we worked on, because that would have meant having the site down for 5 days, which there's not a time frame in which we could do that kind of stuff. So as part of the process, we mapped a lot of stuff from 7 to 10. We actually eliminated some things, dropped fields we weren't using, dropped content types that we didn't really use. But we have kept everything that was in Drupal 7. So there is a historic copy, if you will, of the Drupal 7 site so that we can go back in case there's something I missed or, we need it for reference or something like that, so we can look at it. But the actual migration of the database, once all of the sort of basic structure of Drupal 7 was mapped to 10, then we had to actually migrate the data, right? So that turned out to be a lot of custom work. And I got it down from the 5-day mark to about 12 to 14 hours by doing different things, like optimizing some of the database stuff, fixing the way that Drupal dealt with. There's some stuff, Drupal doesn't anticipate things like 900,000 users, right? It figures you got a couple of hundred. So it's very fast for a couple of hundred. So we use that, but it does have waterfall features when you're writing your own migrations, or high watermarks, sorry. The whole thing was going over a waterfall, but that's different. High watermarks, so they kept track of where stuff was. So once I ran the base migration, when I got that down to a reasonable amount of time in like January, February, I stopped doing that, and then I just started doing incremental, like weekly migrations of the new data. And the high watermark stuff made that go pretty quick once we got everything sorted out and optimized. So, but then starting back in so it took, working with our consultants, it took about a year to get all the migrations written and to get everything mapped from 7 to 10. And that went about a pace as it would, because there's like, the way the CALI works, we're small, so sometimes, a few weeks would go by without anything happening. But starting in September, when we had all that stuff straightened out, we kind of kicked it into high gear and we started reworking the custom modules. So the big thing that we had, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, is the lesson module, and I'll show you that, which powers all the CALI lessons. But that was several thousand lines of code that need to be migrated from Drupal 7 to 10. And it took some work and some more consultants. So also AI helped because the basic structures between 7 and 10 changed a lot. And the Drupal 7 code was up to 15 years old in places. So it kind of accreted things as time went by. And so there was stuff that didn't work anymore, and there were things that we didn't need, and there was stuff I had like notes and comments about stuff I wanted to do, and I'll mention that again in a little bit. But eventually we got through all of that. We missed a couple of windows, right? So when I started work on the modules in September, I figured we could get completely done by to catch the Christmas break, right? So we were looking at like the middle of December, and then that became unrealistic. So I thought, well, we could still catch the week of Christmas, like between Christmas and New Year's. That wasn't going to work. And then the week of ALS, while everybody really wasn't looking, was the next target that we missed. And then after that, there were a series of, that's when we were running into migration optimization issues. And I was wrapping up some other coding, but eventually we settled on Easter weekend, which has its pluses and its minuses. On the plus side, there weren't a lot of students around. Schools were mostly closed. On the minus side, folks were starting into exam period, right? So the week after Easter would be busy. The week leading into Easter was relatively quiet. So we did that. We cut it over, and the actual process for moving from 7 to 10, structurally, we had it set up so that the two code bases sat next to each other on our web cluster out in the AWS cloud, so that we could just repoint Apache essentially on each one of the nodes to shift from to switch from the Drupal 7 code to Drupal 10 code. And then there was the fresh database for Drupal 10. We shared we used EFS mounts for like some of the data that doesn't live inside of Drupal, like the lessons, a lot of the download stuff, our authoring platforms, some things like that, the self-published and QuizWrite stuff that's produced by our authoring systems. All of that didn't change, so we just moved those EFS mounts from the Drupal 7 tree into the Drupal 10 tree. And we did a final migration, fired it all up. It went, how'd it go, Tobias? It went okay. Yeah, it went. Yeah. It went pretty well. And then, however, at the same time, when we put our guard down for a second while we were moving stuff around, and so the load balancer wasn't acting quite as firewall-y as we would have liked to have been. So at exactly the moment that we're bringing it back up, we get swamped by DDoS stuff, right? So we get this huge attack. The first week that the site was up, over 35% of our traffic was coming from mainland China. We have no business in China. So it was all attacks against the award system and against search and a whole bunch of stuff, which caused the site to actually crash violently a couple of times on Monday, which was pretty bad. But Tobias got all that walled off. We pulled everything back together. And we managed to by the end of the week, we had smoothed all that out. And we were up and running again. So, and then after that, there've been a couple of issues with the website, but they haven't really been related to Drupal specifically. Again, some attack stuff, some odd things that just happened. And we uncovered some bugs, just because it turns out that having like 3 or 4 people test stuff isn't the same as having a couple thousand people test stuff. So we did uncover some bugs in the first week that needed to be fixed. We got all that stuff sorted out, and it's fine now. It's just chugging along. So the environment that we're using, that we moved to, is all sort of, well, state of the art, I guess, if you know. So we run Linux, and we updated all PHP's up to date, the latest MySQL, Solar 9, simple SAML to do sign-ins with our to our authoring systems, Memcache, which is the first time I'd used outside caching for Drupal, so that was interesting. But we got that tuned up, and that's actually helped performance on the site quite a bit. Proxy is our load balancer and firewall, and then Apache powers the nodes. But the whole thing lives out in the Amazon cloud, and there's a list of the various Amazon services that we use. There's probably more, but those are the ones that periodically bug me. So let's take a quick look at some of the stuff in Drupal 10. Oh, I'm just motoring right along. So one of the big things, CALI awards, there are 400,000 of those. registrars submit the awards. They can actually upload a spreadsheet that gets processed into a batch of awards, and it's kind of cool. However, it does make the registrars have to format the data exactly. And in Drupal 10, we actually tightened up the data, the way that it gets handled. So we've had a couple of registrars who've had to redo their spreadsheets because they were doing things they weren't supposed to be doing anyway, and we just don't put up with that anymore. So, but that's been working. But one of the things that we added to that's kind of cool is the ability to print those awards on demand, because the way that the system works now, the registrars submit the awards, we get the batch of them, we print paper certificates and ship them back to the schools. Schools have award ceremonies or whatever, and they hand out the awards. But a lot of times students are like, well, I lost my copy. It was lost in a flood, a fire, an earthquake. Something happened to it. I don't know where it went. I gave it to my mom. Can I get another one? That sort of stuff. And generally, we try to be accommodating for folks. But one of the things we're adding is the ability for folks to print their own awards as a PDF. So that generates a really nice PDF of the award, and you can keep the PDF, or you can print it however you want to print it, and that sort of stuff. Now, right now, that feature is only available to CALI staff, because we have to figure out a way to stop people from building giant-sized scrapbooks of all the people that have ever won CALI awards, right? We don't want people to just be able to go in and print off anybody's award. People would not appreciate that. And then there's also the issue of some awards are hidden because for one reason or another, they don't want to display names and stuff. That's a whole thing. But we're going to tie this to a system that will allow students to claim an award, right? So you'll have to have an account from your school with a matching name and some other things. We haven't ironed out all the details yet. That'll link your award to your account, and then you'll have access to that print button. Because like right now, the awards themselves are publicly viewable. So if you have the link to an award, because people put them on their resumes and stuff. And every award has its own link. Ready? And if anybody has any questions at any point, feel free to yell them out. So the lesson. So the next two things I'm going to talk about are lesson reporting and then the lesson link system. In Drupal 7, there were a series of modules, I think 3 or 4, that handled the running of lessons and the reporting on them, as well as the lesson link, the lesson link system that lets faculty put together sets of links that are trackable so that they could get student work back. So, but that got a complete rewrite. And we can take we went from, come on, do an internet thing. We went from 3 or 4 modules. I basically consolidated it down to 1, and put all of got all the features of the various modules all operating in a single thing, in a single module, so that we could leverage stuff like, getting the, grabbing the results for a student across like a bunch of different functions and stuff with libraries and things. And then this is where one of the things so I used a lot of Copilot with this to help with the structures, and to do the thing that I really hate to do, but I appreciate greatly, which is documentation. So there are a lot of great READMEs that the AI wrote. Some of them are. This one actually is factual. Some of them are not. Some of them, I think, is this one of them? One of them has. Yeah, so one of them has things. So this has the, you notice where it says student enrollment under courses, right? Automatic enrollment when students access course pages. That sounds a lot fancier than it is. And like, it doesn't really do that. But I saved it because I just thought that these were some nice aspirational things. It should do that. It doesn't. But so there's like some stuff when it gets carried away writing stuff. But one of the big things that that did as we moved from the sort of the way that I code it in Drupal 7 anyway, which was kind of like PHP shoehorned into Drupal. So all of this follows Drupal best practices stuff. So as a result, we have things like services that we can call from other places too, right? So stuff like the lesson run service. Well, not the lesson run service. Wait, where is this taxonomy? I think it's the lesson utility service. Lets you do stuff like get all of everything. Like get all of the work that a student's done on all of the lessons that they've done and kind of pull that together in a single thing. Also, it includes a really good XML parser as a service, which is important because all the data that we save when a student runs a lesson, it comes out as the data from that is saved as XML. So we need to parse it. So. And for a long time, we used this nifty little kind of custom parser that my colleague Sam wrote, who also wrote the authoring system and the lesson viewer and all that stuff. So he had a way to parse just the XML that we needed. This one's a little broader, but the interesting thing was that because when I had Copilot giving me suggestions about how to structure the code and things, the system actually did things like kept some of the structures that Sam was using, and they're probably down in here further a little bit. That so that as like sort of the focus on things. So it kind of kept. It sort of picked up on the things that we were really interested in as opposed to stuff that we weren't. Another benefit to using Copilot was that it really likes to do logging. So and Drupal has a pretty sophisticated logging service. So it tied a lot of stuff into the Drupal logging that wasn't getting done before. So now in the Drupal logging, when a faculty member creates lesson links, for example, it ends up in the logs. So I can get an alert on that for, if I wanted to. Also, if a student's having an issue saving data, that error turns up in the Drupal logs, in a way that's easier to spot than just a generic PHP error. So some of the logging stuff has been pretty sophisticated and well appreciated. We can take a look at, wait, where are we? Yeah, so, and then in terms of the reporting that comes out, so when a student looks at their lesson runs, they see them for the current semester, and it shows, well, in this case, this is the admin account, so it's a little weird, but you can see that there's space to resume. So if somebody's working on a lesson, it's saving stuff automatically. When they exit the lesson or they close the tab, they'll be able to resume the lesson where they left off if they go back to this page. But this is the page that they get back here pretty easily. And then that way they don't end up running the same lesson multiple times. They still do for a bunch of reasons, I guess. But this also tells them the last time they looked at the lesson, what the score is if there's one, and then the professor column, if they're using lesson link, which we'll take a quick look at in a minute, they'll be able to, the professor's name turns up there. You can take a look over here too. There should be, I'm looking for, right, so here's one that's marked completed. So the little flares of incomplete and completed is one of the things. I had notes in the code about needing to put indicators in for where people were in terms of like whether or not they had finished the lesson, but I hadn't written any code for it, and Copilot wrote the code. And just dropped these little flares in. I'm like, okay, you're hired. And so they're there for whether or not you've completed something. And if you actually do complete a lesson, there's a review mode, so you can go back in and walk through the lesson. And then if there is a score, you can click on the score. It gives you a report. One of the things that we're going to do is where that says page name, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to anybody. That one's actually one of the more descriptive page names in the entire system, by the way. So one of the things we're going to do is have have that pop open a modal window that'll have the actual question and on it, so that if somebody's here, they can actually look at what it is that they got wrong, right? In this case, the other thing that we added was a quick certificate, which is sort of a version of the thing, and it's got it needs the seal's missing. I gotta stick that back in, but so it's kind of like it actually uses the certificate factory that it built for the awards, but it uses a whole different thing, so you can't confuse it with an award. So there's that. Let me see. Yeah, and so that's some of the future stuff, because some of the future things coming with lessons too is like better sorting of those result pages, because some of them are really long, especially when you get into, if you start looking into previous semesters and stuff. And then there's a feature so lesson link, as you'll see in a second, generates a unique URL that's trackable by the faculty so that they can see your work. And you're supposed to use it. But sometimes students don't. They don't follow directions. I know, hard to, there you go. So lesson link, it allows you to take like what's a normal run and assign it to a course. But you have to get the number from the faculty. Because some faculty, they sort of fall into a couple of camps about lesson link and not following directions. Some faculty are really adamant that like they don't care if a student ran the lesson, and and if they didn't follow the lesson link, then they didn't follow the directions, and so they need to go back and do it again. Sometimes they're like, well, I just want them to do it anyway, and they can show me that certificate, that's fine. And then sometimes they're like, I really would appreciate it if I could like see what the work that the student did. So the lesson link thing does that. Alrighty, so lesson link itself, Um, we made some improvements on the way that that it works also, and that's available to. So only faculty can see Lesson Link. So Lesson Link lets you create a set of lessons, um, and the links are unique to your to the course and semester, and then the faculty member can see all the results and some analytics, right? So the students can have access to things like this is the page that has these are the lesson links, and so you know the unique identifier for this particular one is 12855. So that's they're not terribly complicated, but they do it does tie it to this professor in this course, and so then they can see whatever's going on, right? So and they can take a look at like the grades, which is kind of where we just were. They can see some more detailed things. This is the analytics page. Actually, I'll show you one that actually has some data in it. Again, we can go back and take a look at archives. Archives are always good. So if we take a look at something like this, we can see there's results here. So we get we get a nice table, gives you some information about the total number of runs, the unique number of students, that sort of thing. And then it actually then gives you scores and the number of answered versus correct results, and then it gives you the total number of questions, right? Because sometimes it's important to because you get it's like one of these things. Like if you've ever worked through a CALI lesson, you can do like 2 questions and then jump to the end and mark it as complete. And we don't stop you from doing that, right? Because it's like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do. But on the other hand, if you feel you must. But if it's a lesson link, the faculty member is going to see 2 out of 2, right? But then they're going to see 26 total questions. And that's going to make them go, hey, wait a minute. You didn't actually do all that work, did you? Now, it is some lessons have branching in them, so you won't see all the questions. But what you will see in a class is that that most of the students answered 17 questions, and there were and it shows a total of 25, and you can figure that the other 8 were questions that most people got passed. And you can see that in some of the other features that are available to faculty members in terms of looking at the contents of lessons. I guess the moral of the story is if you're going to assign lessons, take a look at them first so you have an idea of what the scope is and how many questions are in there. All that information is available. Yeah, we'll do. So, and then the other thing that got changed for the better is the form for actually creating lesson links. So there's we can just pick some things. We'll keep it. You get 4 semesters, by the way, the current semester, and then the next 3. So in case you want to plan ahead, which people do, they're building lesson links for the fall already. So that's kind of cool. If you pick a topic, it will show you all of the lessons. And then you can look at their modal pop-ups to show you the description of the lesson. This needs some work. The lists are too long, but they're all there. So you pick a couple. Let's see. We'll click on a couple here, and then you create your lesson link. And you get that. It also sends you an email. The email should have, let's see. Yeah, so that's the lesson link, the email that you get when you create lesson links. So they'll get sent to you. So if you create them or you know somebody who's creating them and they aren't getting this email, it always helps to let me know because sometimes we can figure out what the problem is. The system always sends it. Whether or not the internet eats it before it gets to where it needs to go is another problem. So there's that. Let's see, what else do we have? So one of the things is that there's also a thing called Lesson Live, right? So if you have a set of lesson links and you're the faculty member, you can run them like this, and you'll see the part in the upper right here. It's kind of off the edge, but where it says Lesson Live participants, because you can actually have your students, if you have this open and your students follow the same link, you can track them in real time from this page. And then, so you could use this in the classroom because they'll always be able to, you can work through the lesson with the class. You can get, maybe not project the results on the wall, but keep them on the podium and see what folks are doing. There's also, when it's running, clicking on the lesson link logo will actually put you on the same page as the professor so that if you sort of drifted off, you can come back in. So there's a lot of fun stuff there. Alrighty, let's go back to lesson link. Yeah, that's all we have there. What do we else? The book downloads. We fixed it, an annoying thing about the book downloads, which was there was a form you had to fill out. But every download, you had to fill out the form, which was kind of annoying, obviously. If you were logged in, the form would pre-populate, and so that made it a little bit better. But the other thing was that the organization, the law school section, was an open text, and so people would type in all kinds of things, right? So, and then resulting in my colleague John Jorgensen not being happy when he was like, "Oh, I'd love to sort out that data," and then realizing that he's got to figure out UMich and University of Michigan and Michigan not state law school, whatever, because people could type in anything and they did, and so it was hard to sort of group by organizations. The new version, there's a pick list. So you start typing in your school name, and so you can do other, but like all those pick lists, it takes more effort to pick other than your own school or a school. So the data is a lot cleaner. So that'll help us with reporting. Okay. So the going forward part. Man, this is the part that's going to be really interesting, and nobody's here. Oh, well, we can always get it next time. So we're going to open, we have opened an API. So Drupal 10 comes with, built into core, a JSON API that's built around the standard for JSON APIs. So what that means is that when you turn it on, you get immediate open access to like all the public data about the things in the objects in Drupal, right? Because it's object oriented, and that looks like. Wait, let me see. I do have. Excuse me. Oh, that's it. So for example, this is the list of lessons as far as the API is concerned. So I know it's really exciting. You're like, wow, I don't even know what to do with that, which is true. Neither do I. So there is one of the things about it being built on a standard is that it's you can actually get sort of auto-generated documentation that helps you walk through the API, and it's only slightly less annoying than looking at the raw JSON. But it is in 3 columns, which apparently is some sort of giant-sized feature. When this particular automated process that generates the 3 columns is like the only surviving one out of a war in which most of them were only 2 columns, and the 3-column one won. So apparently, I don't know. I have no idea, but it works, and it does give you an idea of sort of what the structures are and like what you can do with things. So, for example, if we scroll down to the content section, let's see, and we take a look at the lesson. Yeah, sorry for the epilepsy-inducing thing there. It's just one of those things. It was just scrolling to an immense amount of text. So, but what you can see here is, it does tell you a lot about what's available and like how it's put together, right? So if you're building something that wants to consume the API, there are specific ways that you can go about it. And it's actually relatively, like once you, there's a set of well, there's some things, right? So filter, which is basically like sort of like, you only want to see lessons that were created between certain dates, for example, say, or you only want to see lessons of the type CALI author. I know you probably thought all the lessons were CALI author lessons. They are not. They will be, though, because the other ones shouldn't be in Drupal anyway, because they can't display them. But and they're not publicly available. So there's different things, and there's sorts. One of the things that it does by default is for no matter where you hit it, it only shows you the first 50 items, and then available for whatever the filter or sort or whatever for the API is, and then you have to programmatically page through it. So it stops it from. It helps discourage sort of attacks against the whole thing. So that's actually kind of nice. And the documentation's okay. If you click on the Learn More in documentation, it takes you to Drupal documentation for the API, which is all right, but as with all open source documentation, there's always room for improvement. I have worked up a couple of things. Nope, that wasn't it. That's not it either. Is it here? No, it's not there. That's not it. This, by the way, is the list of all of the things, like the sort of top level things that are available in the API. So you see things there for lesson and for podcasts and for eLangDell books. So you could do, you could create your own eLangDell bookstore, right? Oh, do you have a question? I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, this is for the folks at home.
Thanks. Hello?
Yeah,
Oh,
there you go.
okay. So we probably mentioned this already, and I just, missed it. But how much exactly is available over the API? I mean, could I build my, Dungeons and Dragons game, with, CALI questions, CALI lessons being administered by the bosses or something?
So the short answer to that question is sure. Why not? So basically it has. Let me see if I can find there. That's what I'm looking for. So this is a little thing that that I cooked up with AI assistance because it's faster that way. That goes in, and so it gives you a list of lessons. But the one of the most interesting things about the lessons, though, is this, right? The lessons are stored there in XML, right? So every one of these pages is, has, some of them have questions, some of them are just text. So the short answer to your question is yes, you could. You would need to pull this, this out and then sort through the questions you want, but you could get it all through the API. So basically, everything that's a publicly viewable field or object in Drupal is available through the API by default. We'll probably restrict access to some stuff based on the fact that these are the questions, and so they do indeed include the answers here in the XML. Now, the interesting thing is that we've always loaded, when you launch a lesson, the viewer loads a bunch of data, including a copy of this file. And so if you know how to view, use the dev tools in a web browser, you can see this right now when you run a lesson. To the best of our knowledge, no law students have exploited this, or at least they've never talked about it on Reddit. So we don't know, I'm sure somebody's figured it out. But
well, couldn't you just make the answers available from another endpoint?
You probably could if we had it stored differently. But the thing is that those pages contain, well, everything that's on the page, which includes the questions, the answers, feedback, any links to any pop-ups or what comes next or where it branches based on the questions and stuff. There's a lot of stuff packed in there. So much so that Vibe, it seems to defeat vibe coding. Like you tell it, I told Gemini to try and figure out this XML, and it didn't. It just sort of gave up. So, but the thing is that all of that's in there. So this is a lessons directory. You could have you can certainly use the data that's in here to build, to build something like this or a different, a version of the E. Langdell bookstore. And then this, and presumably things like Canvas integration could be moved along with access to an API. Because previously, if you wanted to get stuff like this out of Drupal 7, you had to pretty much attack the database directly, and was not so much fun. You could build APIs in Drupal 7 using views, but the overhead was just like sort of, it was not really good. This is excellent, mostly because I just had to turn it on. So, and the restricted version of this, because this only does gets, right? So this only pull information out, publicly available. If you notice on the documentation page, right, you'll see things for doing posts, so you can actually use the API to create a completely decoupled Drupal front end, right, to create content as well as consume it. Because the API will let you authenticate people, it'll let you create, nodes and all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, ultimately, we'll wire our authoring stacks into Drupal through the API. Right now, they run through, well, it's a custom module that essentially creates its own endpoints. But this would allow us to just sort of plug right into Drupal from an API. So, Any other questions? I think I'm at the end. I think that was like the end of my, generally the end of things. Yes, indeed, the questions part. No, go ahead.
So I'm curious about the issue with extracting the answers from those page nodes. Like is it a like a parsing issue? Is it like I mean yeah? What's the hard problem there?
Oh, there's no hard problem. The answers are stashed with the questions in plain text. So it's really not a problem. It's just, I mean, it's just that generally speaking, we'd prefer not to provide the answers to the law students ahead of time. But, on the other hand, more than a few law students will run the lessons, open multiple windows on lessons and just sort of figure out what they're doing. They're really savvy, and I've seen this because I can see these things inside the system. The savvy law students, they've been assigned a lesson, they'll open a regular version, they'll work all the way through it, which the faculty member can't see. They'll work all the way through it, and then they'll open the lesson link that the teacher gave them, and then they'll work through that, but they already know the answers. So they get a really good score. And they think they got away with something, except they actually learned something because there you go. So they, and that's the thing, like, this isn't like exam type stuff, right? So this is intended to teach people, they're tutorials, right? So you can't really cheat, because if you cheat, then you're not learning anything and you've missed the whole point of the whole thing, right? So the on those page nodes, I can find one that's, this one has a lot of essays. Okay, so this one says check boxes, right? So let me see here. Wait, we're gonna do a thing I always hate to do, but we're gonna do it anyway. Does that work? Doesn't work in Mac. Oh, there we go. Look, I can see the text. Okay, so on something like, let's see, so this line says multiple choice, right? So we'll pick that one, right? So as we scroll across the thing, we do see, it's all in there somewhere, right? So scoring tells you what the totals will be, and it's all in here somewhere, right? And it's flagged as like the correct and incorrect answers based on whatever's going on. So, but like I said, that's always been available, and and it's part of the whole thing. I mean, if you wanted to build, I mean, one of the reasons why, in my mind, one of the reasons why the API becomes so powerful is the fact that you can actually easily get your hands on this and build alternate interfaces, right? So you don't like the CALI viewer? I mean, I've been telling people for years they could just build their own, but nobody listens to me. But the other thing is, if anybody's running Drupal 10, Drupal will consume this quite easily also, right? So it's not that difficult then to write something that'll pull the API stuff back into Drupal. So if you've got a Drupal 10 site, I'd love to work with you to try that out. Yes, there's a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not. If we decide that we really want to put a cap on the XML for the lessons themselves, we'll just move that field so it's not so visible and require a login from faculty or something like that. So, but I'm not worried about it. I'm not putting it on GitHub either, but so yeah. Does that answer? Or?
Yeah, I guess it's not so important to make sure that the determined student could never get the answers in advance.
Right. Right. And, you know, yeah. And another thing that comes in the detailed reporting on those lessons, if you're assigning them and you're using lesson link, you can tell how long a student spent on the lesson, right? Because we've had faculty over the years who's, you know, said stuff like, you know, like, how come like everybody else took like a half hour and like this person was in the lesson for like 7 minutes? I'm like, well, they probably figured it out before they started running it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, you know, it's not exam software, you know, so, and, you know, but faculty need to judge on some of that stuff, you know, as they're using the resources. So, but yeah, we haven't had any real issues. There was a time somebody was photoshopping like before we did the lesson link thing, we had a thing where somebody, some student was photoshopping the completion certificates at the end of the lesson, which they were supposed to turn in, and you know, and was basically, you know, photoshopping them with like classmates' names and that's, you know, 100% scores and stuff, and they were turning them in, but they all had the same time, and so that was bad. And the faculty member came to us like, is this possible? And we're like, those really don't, they look like they've been altered. Somebody did get in trouble for that. But you know, that was a long time ago now. So anyway. Anybody else? Oh, check Q&A. We could do that. In case one of the, wait, let's see. Oh, we're the only ones still running. What, everybody else wrap up early? Oh man, they're gonna get the better snacks. Nothing? Okay. How are we doing? I mean, I had till 2:00, right? Oh, I guess everybody else is done. Right, there aren't gonna be any good chips left, are there? No. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Scott bought a lot of chips. So, all right. Well, I think we can wrap it up. I'm going to stop sharing.